Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a good day. Let's head into Collectively Rewilding. And there we go. I was just checking out Tammy's live from earlier today, and that's what you guys all heard when you came in. I get it going in multiple locations, and then I have to figure out where it's at to get it stopped, right? Okay, so I'm going to branch out just a little bit. I want to check out some of the articles in the Small Gardens, Stylish Ways to Live Large Outside that I found in Dollar Tree. I thought that was kind of neat. Oh, it actually is supposed to go for $4.99. And of course, it is just $1.25 at Dollar Tree. Let's go ahead and get started with reading, everyone. All right. Small garden, stylish way to live large outside. And we'll start with number 2. Oh, these are just little bitty sections. A great little garden shed, but these are like advertisements. How funny. I didn't even look at it, right? I've been waiting to share it with you guys. But if it's all going to be advertisements, we won't bother with it, right? Get growing with gorgeous containers. Follow our 10 tips for all season success. 1. Bigger is better. Because plants can grow more roots in big pots, place them in the largest containers possible. Supersized pots also need watering less often since there's more soil to hold the moisture. Number 2, be a water wizard. Water when the top inch of soil is dry to the touch. Avoid leaving pots standing in water, which can rot roots and promote disease. Too much water can be as bad as too little. 3. Go the whole way. Every container needs drainage holes. If you want to use a pot that doesn't come with holes, drill some on the bottom or sides. If needed, raise the pot so excess water can dribble out. 4. Avoid a food fight. Fertilize right. Repeated waterings wash nutrients from the soil quickly. To cut down on tasks, add a slow-release fertilizer at planting, then use a water-soluble fertilizer every other week by mid-season. And let's see if there are organic options for slow-release fertilizer, right? Most of those that I am aware of are not something I would be used to or I would want to use. Slow-release fertilizer, organic. Organic slow-release fertilizers are natural materials like compost and manure that require microbial action to break down and release nutrients over time. However, many common slow-release fertilizers are synthetic and use polymer coatings to control nutrient release. Yuck, right? So for our purposes, we would go with the compost and manure. Water-soluble fertilizer every other week by mid-season is comparable to the seaweed that I've been having break down in the backyard and then spreading out, right? That's a water-soluble fertilizer. 5, friends or enemies. Pay attention to plant tags before you pair a shade lover with a partner that grows best in full sun. Each will do best with others that have the same needs. 6, get the dirt on soil. Regular garden soil is too dense to use in pots. Buy or make a potting mix that contains peat moss, vermiculite, which we don't like, right, or perlite. All 3 of those are unsustainable. Sand and shredded bark or compost. There are other options out there. We've talked about a lot of those here in class. Some plants, such as cacti and succulents, need a fast draining mix, and that's where you're going to use more sand a lot of times. 7, experiment with design. The spiller filler, thriller rule can be too predictable. Think about using any two types of those plants, using any two of those plant types in combination, or fill a container with one type and let it be lush. I'm not very good with containers, as I've mentioned a multitude of times, and so I've never really tried to put more than one kind of plant into a container. Have you guys done any of that?
Let's say that again.
Putting multiple types of plants into a single container?
Well, I tried
Yeah.
in the growth phase. It just
Yeah.
works.
Not like
Sometimes
a
they just
raised
fall in
bed,
there.
like a small container, right? Or not, I shouldn't say a small container, it could be a large container, but not a raised bed.
Well, yeah, some like they usually sell like little almost like starter things and like Lowe's or Home Depot with different types of cactuses.
Totally. I don't usually buy cacti. I did buy a geranium that has grass already in it, but I've never tried mixing them to grow into a container myself, I guess is more what I was saying. I've never tried creating a container with multiple types of flowering plants. Or, well, that's not entirely true. I did add clover to some of the pots that I had at the last place where we rented. There were a couple of different things that I mixed between those, but it wasn't for that really manicured look, the pansies or petunias, and they put all these together in one pot, right? So, all right. 8, plan seasonal swap outs. For ongoing interest in northern climates, plant in weather-resistant containers that won't crack when the mercury drops. Add twigs or evergreens for winter interest, swap spring bulbs for summer annuals, and include grasses to shine in fall. 9, easy does it. For low maintenance, look to grasses, foliage plants like coleus, and self-cleaning annuals like begonias and impatiens. Now that one I think is a really good type of a recommendation for our community. We all seem to have chosen on our own to go more towards the vegetable and fruit route, but still easy does it, right? And that's one of the gardenary principles. I'm really hoping I get the book tomorrow. Her book, Nicole Burke, is called Leaves, Roots, Fruits. Leaves, Roots, and Fruits. And at first I thought, wow, that's just such a basic title. The reason is she believes that people should start with easier and work into more difficult plants a lot of times. So the leaves are going to be your kales and your lettuces and your spinaches and even your microgreens and things like that, right? And then you work into the roots, the carrots and the radishes being a little bit easier than something like a beet. Also, easy is to compare to size. How much space does a person have, right? You can get a lot of carrots and radishes in the same size that you wouldn't be able to have nearly the number of beets, as an example, right? And then after the roots, leaves, roots, and fruits. Then you move into the tomatoes and the cucumbers and corn. And she said that even then you could go further and say the heavy feeders, I think she called them, or perhaps having berries and trees, right? Like she's always evolving her theories as well. And so for your basics, leaves, roots, fruits. And so easy does it, starting with leaves for a vegetable and fruit garden instead of grasses, right? Like they recommend in this article. 10, get a full look right away. Pack in plenty of plants, but take care. Abundantly planted containers can quickly get out of hand. Prune or rip out anything that grows too aggressively. And so they have a pretty good little magazine here. It is very basic, obviously, but definitely covers a lot of good variety. I don't think that we'll read any more of it here. If I go through it and find something that's really worthy of reading, we'll read that at a later time. But I'm just impressed that they have something like this. They have like plants for sunny and hot spots and moist shade areas. They have things about skinny yards and low maintenance plants. A lot of really great material, actually. Nothing too super impressive, but definitely worth somebody picking up if they didn't have the ability to get a more traditional magazine. And so it looks like we are here for living off the land, but we only have about 15 minutes. So instead, let's jump into our book for tonight. Mini Farming Self-Sufficiency on a Quarter Acre. All right. Grow your own seedlings. Garden centers are flooded every spring with home gardeners picking out seedlings for lettuce, broccoli, cucumbers, tomatoes, and so on. For those who grow gardens strictly as a hobby, this works out well because it allows them to get off to a quick start with minimal investment of time and planning. But for the mini farmer who approaches gardening as a small business, it's a bad idea. In my own garden this year, I plan to grow 48 broccoli plants. My goodness. Seedlings from the garden center would cost $18 if discounted and possibly over $30. Even the most expensive organic broccoli seeds on the market cost less than $1 for 48 seeds. If transplants are grown at home, their effective cost drops from $18 to $30 down to $1. Adding the cost of soil and containers, the cost is still only about $2 for 48 broccoli seedlings. Considering that a mini farm would likely require transplants for dozens of crops ranging from onion sets to tomatoes and lettuce, it quickly becomes apparent that even if all seed is purchased, growing transplants at home saves hundreds of dollars a year. Prefer open pollinated varieties. There are two basic types of seed/plant varieties available: hybrid and open pollinated. Open pollinated plant varieties produce seeds that duplicate the plants that produced them. Hybrid plant varieties produce seeds that are at best unreliable and sometimes sterile and therefore often unusable. Although hybrid plants have the disadvantage of not producing good seed, they often have advantages that make them worthwhile, including aspects of hybrid vigor. Hybrid vigor refers to a poorly understood phenomenon in plants where a cross between two different varieties of broccoli can yield far more vigorous and productive offspring than either parent. Depending on genetic factors, it also allows the creation of plants that incorporate some of the best qualities of both parents while de-emphasizing undesirable traits. Using hybridization then, seed companies are able to deliver varieties of plants that incorporate disease resistance into a particularly good tasting vegetable variety. So why not just use hybrid seeds? Because there's no such thing as a free lunch. For plants that normally self-pollinate, such as peppers and tomatoes, there is no measurable increase in the vigor of hybrids. The hybrids are just a proprietary marketing avenue. So buying hybrids in those cases just raises costs. And since the tomato seeds can't be saved, the mini farmer has to buy seeds again the next year. The cost of seeds for a family-sized mini farm that produces most of the family's food for the year can easily approach $200, a considerable sum. Beyond that, seed collected and saved at home can not only reduce costs, but be resold if properly licensed. Here in New Hampshire, a license to sell seeds costs only $100 annually. Another reason to save seeds from open pollinated plant varieties is if each year you save seeds from the best performing plants, you will eventually create varieties with genetic characteristics that work best in your particular soil and climate. That's a degree of specialization that money can't buy. Of course, there are cases where hybrid seeds and plants outperform open pollinated varieties by the proverbial country mile. Corn is one such example. The solution: use the hybrid seeds, or if you are so inclined, make your own. Hybridization of corn is quite easy. Carol Depp's excellent book, Breed Your Own Vegetable Varieties, gives all of the details on how to create your own hybrids. Hybrid seeds that manifest particular pest or disease-resistant traits can also be a good choice when those pests or disease cause ongoing problems. When using hybrid seeds eliminates the need for synthetic pesticides, they are a good choice. Use intensive gardening techniques. A number of intensive gardening methods have been well documented over the past century. What all of these have in common is growing plants much more closely spaced than traditional row methods. This closer spacing causes a significant decrease in the amount of land required to grow a given quantity of food, which, in turn, significantly reduces requirements for water, fertilizer, and mechanization. Because plants are grown close enough together to form a sort of living mulch, the plants shade out weeds and retain moisture better, thus decreasing the amount of work required to raise the same amount of food. Intensive gardening techniques make a big difference in the amount of space required to provide all of a person's food. Current agribusiness practices require 30,000 square feet per person or 3/4 acre. Intensive gardening practices can reduce the amount of space required for the same nutritional content to 700 square feet. And this is quoted from One Circle, written by Duhan D. Gebhard. Oh, no, Duhan D. and Gebhard C. I see that now. Okay. Plus another 700 square feet for crops grown specifically for composting. That's only 1,400 square feet per person, so a family of 3 can be supplied in just 4,200 square feet. That's less than 1/10 of an acre. In many parts of the United States, land is extremely expensive, and lot sizes average a ½ acre or less, usually less than a 1/4 acre in my experience. Using traditional farming practices, it isn't even possible to raise food for a single person in a ½ acre lot, but using intensive gardening techniques allows only half of that lot, a 1/4 acre, to provide nearly all the food for a family of 4, generate thousands of dollars in income besides, allow raising small livestock, plus leave space for home and recreation. Intensive gardening techniques are the key to self-sufficiency on a small lot. Compost. Because growing so many plants in such little space puts heavy demand on the soil in which they are grown, all intensive agriculture methodologies pay particular attention to maintaining the fertility of the soil. The law of conservation of matter indicates that if a farmer grows a plant, that plant took nutrients from the soil to build itself. If the plant is then removed from the area, the nutrients in that plant are never returned to the soil, and the fertility of the soil is reduced. To make up for the loss of fertility, standard agribusiness practices apply commercial fertilizers from outside the farm. The fertilizer costs money, of course. While there are other worthwhile reasons for avoiding the use of non-organic fertilizers, including environmental damage, the biggest reason is a mini farm with a properly managed soil fertility plan can drastically reduce the need to purchase fertilizer altogether, thereby reducing one of the biggest costs associated with farming and making the mini farm more economically viable. In practice, a certain amount of fertilizer will always be required, especially at the beginning, but using organic fertilizers and creating compost can ultimately reduce fertilizer requirements to a bare minimum. The practice of preserving soil fertility consists of growing crops specifically for compost value, growing crops to fix atmospheric nitrogen into the soil, and composting all crop residues possible, along with the specific compost crops, and practically anything else that isn't nailed down. Chapter 5 covers composting in detail. A big part of soil fertility is the diversity of microbial life in the soil, along with the presence of earthworms and other beneficial insects. There are approximately 4,000 pounds of bacteria in an acre of fertile topsoil. 4,000 pounds, that's a lot. These organisms work together with soil nutrients to produce vigorous growth and limit the damage done by disease-causing microorganisms known as pathogens, right? That's something that we talked about when we're creating our own natural fertilizer with urea. We hygienize it for 6 months to eliminate bad pathogens, right? Excuse me, guys. Quitting smoking. Hopefully you guys are all doing great with that. It does create throat congestion. Grow calorie-dense crops. As already noted, vegetables provide about only 10% of the average American's calories. Because of this, a standard vegetable garden may supply excellent produce and rich vitamin content, but the economic value of the vegetables won't significantly reduce your food bill over the course of a year. The solution to this problem is to grow crops that provide a higher proportion of caloric needs, such as fruits, dried beans, grains, and root crops such as potatoes and onions. Raise meat at home. Most Americans are accustomed to obtaining at least a portion of their protein from eggs and meat. Agribusiness meats are often produced using practices and substances, parentheticals, such as growth hormones and antibiotics, and parentheticals, that worry a lot of people. Certainly, factory farmed meat is very high in the least healthy fats compared to free-range, grass-fed animals or animals harvested through hunting. The problem with meat, in an economic sense, is that the feeding for 1 calorie of meat generally requires anywhere from 2 to 4 calories of feed. This sounds, at first blush, like a very inefficient use of resources, but it isn't as bad as it seems. Most livestock, even small livestock like poultry, gets a substantial portion of its diet from foraging around. Poultry will eat all of the ticks, fleas, spiders, beetles, and grasshoppers that can be found, plus dispose of the farmer's table scraps. If meat is raised on premises, then the mini farmer just has to raise enough extra food to make up the difference between the feed needs and what was obtained through scraps and foraging. Let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and finish this chapter. No. Okay, but we will finish this next section. Oh my goodness. Plant some fruit. There are a number of fruits that can be grown in most parts of the country. Apples, grapes, blackberries, pears, and cherries, to name a few. Newer dwarf fruit tree varieties often produce substantial amounts of fruit in only 3 years, and they take up comparatively little space. Grapes native to North America, such as the Concord grape, are hardy throughout the continental United States. And some varieties, like the muscadine grapes, grow prolifically in the South and have recently been discovered to offer unique health benefits. Strawberries are easy to grow and attractive to youngsters. A number of new blackberry and raspberry varieties have been introduced, some without thorns, that are so productive you'll have more berries than you can imagine. Fruits are nature's candy and can be easily preserved for applesauce, apple butter, snacks, jellies, pie filling, and shortcake topping. Many fruits can also be stored whole for a few months using root cellaring. Fruits grown with minimal or no pesticide usage are expensive at the store, and growing your own will put even more money in the bank with minimal effort. All right. Great reading there. I enjoyed that a bunch. I hope you guys did as well. Let's go ahead and jump into Collectively Rewilding and take a peek at our calendar. All right, guys. So we'll be back together again if you're able to make it tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Mountain, 8:30 p.m. Central, and 9:30 p.m. Eastern for Exploring Organic Soil Regeneration. Hopefully you guys are able to make it, and I hope that you all have a wonderful night. Please feel free to unmute everybody and say good night. Thank you, Benny.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
See you tomorrow.
Enjoy your evening. Thank you all for coming in, and I'm tired, so I'm like all up here. Good night. Bye, guys.